Welcome back to the Gun Collective podcast. My name is Jon Patton. Guys, it's going to be a ripper of an episode. I've got an amazing guest, but first, we got to shout out our sponsors, blackoutcoffee.com/TGC, and use the code TGC. Get yourself some caffeine juice. That is the way to stay alive these days. Everybody needs a little bit of caffeine, and if you're like me, you don't always drink coffee. Maybe you have some tea, some English breakfast is my favorite. Blackoutcoffee.com/TGC and use code TGC to get yourself a little discount. Now, we've also got some support from Vertex, VERTX.com, and use the code TGC. Get yourself an EDC bag, maybe some apparel. Man, I'm telling you, they do such an amazing job. I even travel with their it's like a wheeled duffel bag. I take that everywhere when I'm flying, and it's, again, awesome. Use the code TGC, get at least 15% off. I'm joined again by the man, the myth, the legend, Barton Bollfrass of Roborounds. Now, for context, we did an episode, what was it, like a month or two ago, right?
Yeah.
And that, since that went out, that was, I think it's closing in on 100,000 views on YouTube. So some really, really good success there. And we figured we'd follow up and I guess just kind of answer some of the questions that came up and continue the discussion. Barton, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's incredibly hot here in Texas. We're in the middle of a nasty heat wave, but
what's incredibly hot? Give context to that.
105 every day for about 10 days. And
That's pretty hot.
I know the whole country, actually, I think the whole planet's going through a terrible heat wave, but Texas is getting a lot of it. It's nasty.
Is it super humid where you are in Texas?
Actually, I'm from Houston, where it's just the capital of humidity. And Austin is less humid, but it can get pretty bad here. My new word is estivation, which is the opposite of hibernation. So we've been estivating inside this summer.
I cannot imagine trying to get anything done outside with that kind of heat. I can't imagine. So we had a lot of comments about the Robo Rounds, and if you guys are not sure what this is about, go listen to the last episode because we can't recap it all. But one of the things that I said, there were two sort of prevailing naysaying type comments. One of which was that these Robo Rounds that you guys make and sell are not necessary because shotgun shells exist. And that's what people would use to, quote unquote, shoot drones out of the sky. What are your thoughts on that?
They're absolutely right. Like, shotguns are amazing. The Robo Rounds go a little farther, but you hunt birds with shotguns. You should hunt drones with shotguns. But therein lies a really big problem. There are places where you really shouldn't shoot shotguns and firearms, and that's like embassies. Could you imagine shooting a bunch of projectiles at a foreign nation and then asking them to understand that that would not go well?
Airports. Hey, we shot down your drone.
We shot down a drone. I hope you're excited for us, but we missed with the first couple and we killed a few people. We're real sorry. And I know that in today's media globally, someone would very quickly spin that into the United States has just fired on a sovereign nation. And so the people that protect...
It becomes an act of war.
Mm-hmm, that's right. And the people that protect our embassies are looking for a zero collateral damage system to take drones down, so that when you miss the target, because I'm a bird hunter and I don't hit every bird that I shoot at, and those pellets typically land somewhere on the ground, on a farm or near water. And so there are rules that apply, and every bird hunter knows this, that when you hunt near the coast or you hunt near lakes, you got to use steel shot instead of lead shot. And that's completely acceptable. Well, this is no different. And when you go hunting drones and you're law enforcement or military, and you need to protect an airport or a seaport or a embassy, someplace with lots of sensitive assets all around you, people, planes. Imagine a drone that flies between two ships in a seaport. How does either ship fire at it without hitting the ship across the way? And so there needs to be a no collateral damage system. But to answer your question in the short, man, shotguns rock. Yeah, they do the great job to a certain distance. But once you get past that distance, you'll have to increase the size of the load, and they'll be incredibly effective. But you just can't fire those everywhere.
Right, right. So what you sort of centered that position around was governmental work.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of the people listening and watching last time were thinking of this in terms of civilian stuff. When you're talking about shooting drones down, and there were hundreds of people talking about the fact that shooting down a drone in the United States is an FAA violation and a
Mhm.
federal crime. Do you
For
want to expand
civilians,
on
that's accurate. Yes, for civilians, that is accurate. The FAA considers shooting down a drone a big, bad no-no. And Title 49 explains that really well. But Title 6 gives an exception to entities that fall under the Secretary or Attorney General. And that allows law enforcement and military to follow a certain set of rules of engagement. And that doesn't just give them the ability to just say, hey, check out that drone. I don't like it. Boom, you're out of the sky. You have to follow a certain set of rules. And that's, can you visually see? Can you audibly? Can you try and take control of the drone? Can you take a certain number of steps before you can then disable or destroy the drone? But that only applies to law enforcement and military. And if you want to look up, it's not just the specific branch of the military and a specific branch of law enforcement. If you look up Title 6, it references the secretary and the attorney general. Well, look up the hierarchy, the chain of command underneath the secretary or the attorney general, and you'll find that there is a number of branches that apply and that fit the bill. But
Okay.
I was surprised that none of them knew Title 6 existed. Whenever we speak to
So
them,
you said Title 6. What does that mean? What is Title 6? Because I've never heard of it before talking to you.
so I had neither, and so after an exhaustive search of the internet, and everything is on the internet, and these documents are all accessible. I can post that entire. Actually, I think I posted it to one of the replies on the last
Okay.
podcast.
Okay,
I
great. Great.
posted the actual link of the full name of the document, and it's also listed under the white papers on our website. And inside of every case that we give for testing and demonstrations, the law enforcement and military entities, there's a half-page card in there so they can display it, because law enforcement will approach other law enforcement and say, "Hey, you can't do that." The FAA says you can't do that, and I was surprised to see a lot of replies from, I believe, entities or individuals in law enforcement on the last podcast that said, yeah, law enforcement gets ticketed doing this already, and that's simply because they don't know that Title 6 exists.
Yeah, I think it's a complicated subject because it is relatively new to I guess our culture. The ability to for an individual to buy a drone and fly it into non-friendly airspace, I guess you could say, like over your neighbor's house or something of that nature. That there's some really complicated rules about it.
Yeah.
With weights of these drones, what you're doing. Do you have the proper licensing? And you and I talked about shooting them down, and I think people immediately just wrap that into a drone in their neighborhood sort of thing, and that's where
Mm.
that's where
Yeah,
things get out.
I saw a lot of the comments saying, I think they ranged from, I don't care what the law says. If I think the drone is threatening me, I'm going to shoot it down over my property.
Sure.
I saw others that said, under no circumstances can even law enforcement shoot down a drone. It was a very wide range. And, in the beginning, when anything is new, any emerging technology, it's a really accurate term here. Anytime there's an emerging technology, the existing technology uh, really is not receptive to its inclusion. And you see this, you see this when the mobile application of any piece of equipment, whether you're turning a drill into a mobile drill or a phone into a mobile phone, the existing infrastructure and all the entities that support that become very leery and will do everything they can to kind of, politely impede that. But once it's accepted, it's very widely then supported and said, okay, well, yes, this exists. This exists for this purpose. Here is how you should use it. Here is who it applies to. But until everybody knows about it, the powers that be are going to say, we don't know what you're talking about, and you just can't do that. And it's very
Right.
difficult to tell any law enforcement agency, well, you can't tell me I can't do this. That usually doesn't go well.
Yeah, and not only that, but not all law enforcement agencies are as adaptable and as eager to learn the current law as others. It's not the same across the board. One of
Right.
the other questions I saw that sort of made me curious, or this thought process, I guess, was the idea that if you put say a rifle round or a pistol round through the CPU of
Mm,
a given entity, whether that's a robot, a drone, or some combination thereof, with the way, Boston Dynamics is, who the hell knows what category we're going to
right.
come up with. The idea was, if you put a round, a projectile, I'll say,
Mhm.
through the CPU of one of these units, they're done.
Yeah,
And
let me be very specific and clarify that, because I also saw a bunch of replies regarding that, and I think if I don't be more clear, it's going to sound like, you know you can do anything you want to a CPU, and it'll just keep on running like a Timex. But no, the entities that we've been speaking with have said the majority of shielding in a robot is going to be around its CPU and its battery. Those are the most important things. And so, if you were to put heavy shielding on the entire robot, it gets incredibly heavy. It's difficult to maneuver. And so, the majority of heavy shielding is going to be around those two. The entities we're speaking with have said that they have put around through the shielding around those two. Now, I'll be very honest. Could they mean that missed the CPU entirely and only went through the shielding? Quite possibly. Does that mean that it did some damage to the CPU, but it kept functioning on a basic level or a broken level, or it worked for a short time and then collapsed or stopped working? They did not clarify. But the statement they made was that they have put a round through the shielding around the battery and around the CPU, and it did not stop the robot from doing what it was doing. And so I must be very clear and honest. We did not put a round through a CPU. We're working very specifically and very, very carefully with the military, and, like I've referenced, 3 and 4 letter agencies, to not make any violations, to not do anything beyond contractual obligations or do anything that would get us in any trouble. And so we're working very carefully. And so a lot of the information we get regarding firing ammunition at robotics is coming directly from them.
I would suspect that they are also a little bit tight-lipped about how much information they share with people they don't necessarily have a contract with.
Well said, but also it's kind of like, I would say it's like me calling up Samsung and saying, "Hey, look, which port can I stick a screwdriver into?" They're going to say, "You shouldn't." Their
Please
response of
don't.
you shouldn't do that. Really, they would probably freeze up and say, wow, how do we respond to that? Anything we say will be constituted as, so you're not saying I shouldn't put it in this port. So yeah, you shouldn't put a screwdriver into any port on your television, but calling up the manufacturer and asking them how to do something incredibly disruptive and destructive to their product usually is responded with a hang up or a no.
I can't fathom trying to, like, say, we talked about Boston Dynamics because they're the most visible in that space. I can't imagine trying to be them and push and advance and create these amazing new technologies and arguably terrifying technologies, and then have somebody like you come along and say, "Hey, we want to break this. How do we do it?"
Right, right, and what's funny is 9 out of 10 say, "That's ridiculous," "That's ridiculous." But there's that 1 in 10 that says, "You make a great point. We don't really have any way to protect ourselves here." And so, I think there's a lot that what's a delicate way to say this? There's a lot that artificial intelligence doesn't want you to know, much like the government or an entity who doesn't want you to fully know or encompass something. And when it finally is, then they're very open and very honest and very straightforward about it. But I'm a little leery about when all of a sudden there's a major problem with artificial intelligence being mixed with robotics. And then someone saying to me, we made a big mistake. Let's start trying to fix it. I think the problem will be way, way too big by then. And so we need to be making the safety goggles at the same time as we're making the things that blind us. We need
Man,
to be
what a
making,
great way to explain that.
yeah, not
We see them
afterwards.
happen simultaneously.
Yeah, my mom is getting on in her years, and I just had the explanation. You don't want to fall and break something to realize that you need a cane. You want to use the cane now so you don't ever fall. And I think that we don't have the things in place that are going to protect us. And if anyone tells me, no, we've got your best interest at heart, maybe 100 years from now, there might be an artificially intelligent entity that says, no, I have your best interests at heart. And I might believe that. But for the next century, it's going to be a bunch of people. And unfortunately, in the 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock news every night, it's bolstered that people don't make the best decisions with the equipment and technology they're given. And so I think there's going to be a period of time that people are really going to abuse this technology, and without any means of protecting ourselves, where sensitive assets are, you can't just fire an AR-15 or a shotgun through your kitchen wall if your kid is asleep on the other side.
That's
There's
less
things you're
than
going to have to think about. I agree with anyone who says you are wrong. A shotgun works best. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Shotguns are awesome when you don't care what you're shooting at beyond your target. But any responsible gun owner, like myself, will tell you the first rule of guns is they're always loaded. The second rule of guns is they're always loaded. The third rule of guns is there's always a target behind the target. And in my opinion, the fourth obvious, don't ever point the gun at anybody. But in this industry, when you're dealing with robots and protecting yourselves from them, you're going to have to point something at a robot, and you're going to have to worry about the target behind the target, and you're going to have to protect yourself.
I think it's, we're bridging new gaps here in both technology and in our mental space. I think one of the most difficult things that we are faced with is not necessarily the advancement of technology, but our ability to understand the capabilities that we're creating. Because I don't remember the name of the curve, and maybe you can add in on this, but there's a technology curve that we're currently part of. It was this graph that it was like, hey, here's advancement of technology, and in about the 70s, 80s, 90s, it just went up on this incredible turn where we are advancing faster than we understand what to do with. Uh, and I think one of the things the best way to phrase this up, I suppose, is we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah, the unknown unknowns are what we always try and plan for. And you have, um, we have a firm grasp on everything. We understand everything until someone shows us that we didn't. And then we go, oh, yeah, we had a firm grasp on everything except for that. But
Yeah, I,
that's
I knew
cool.
I knew about that.
Yeah, yeah. But now we know. And so ever forward. And I think it was a terrible person who said, a few dead people is a tragedy and a few million is a statistic. And I don't want us to all of a sudden be at the hands of something that someone says, I'm really sorry I made that, but it's out of control and it's doing things that, it shouldn't. Let's look at the Tesla. I think they're a magnificent brand, an amazing stock that's doing well, and Elon Musk is a very charismatic individual. But this technology is really causing a lot of problems right now. And there are a lot of problems that really should have been ironed out before they were unleashed on the public. And it's no secret that lots and lots of projects have been tested on the public, just to kind of see what they do. Statistically, it gave us some great information. But unfortunately, that was at the demise and the sacrifice of a lot of good people. And so I think people want to know what AI doesn't want you to know, and that's how to protect yourself. I don't think anyone of power, anyone in control, wants anyone else to know how to stop or take that control. I think usually that's, if I'm not mistaken, we'll use what's the I don't watch television, so the dun dun the
Oh,
show, all the law shows and the police shows, and I always noticed when those are on and the trailer between the news shows you what's coming on. It's the police are never happy about the lawyers getting in the way of them doing stuff, and the lawyers never happy with what the police are doing, and so therein lies the never-ending problem of the law and justice. And you have what's right morally and what's right politically and what's right today and tomorrow. I think one thing that binds everyone together, every color, every creed, every nationality, all genders, is a fear of something like a robot that you just can't stop, that's stronger than you. And it doesn't matter if you call for help, it will do something terrible before you can stop it. It doesn't matter who you call, it will do something terrible before you can stop it. And if the only recourse you have is just to sit there and take it, I don't think people are happy about that. And so I think when it comes to shooting drones out of the sky, military and law enforcement only. Title VI explains that. And unfortunately, for a lot of citizens, unless you're protecting a Marvel set, that may be another topic for another time. But I don't know how Disney didn't get in trouble for shooting a drone out of the sky for protecting their interests from someone spying on their
Well,
stuff.
they just have lots of money. Really, that's what it comes down to, is money.
Yeah, another topic for another time. But I really think people, when it comes to center fire, anti-robotic ammunition, and when it comes to protecting themselves from something that they're ultimately going to see when the enemy drops them off on your street, that's the big problem. Is if the enemy can simply float something, and maybe enemy is a too strong a word, if our adversaries is probably a better word, if
Sure.
our adversaries can float things over our country, and we're going to talk about it for a few days before we act on it, and if this problem has persisted since 9/11, I never want to dishonor our brave men and women from 9/11, but specifically I'm referring to the 45-minute delay it took them to get our planes in the sky when it was supposed to only take 11 minutes. I know sometimes things take longer than you would expect, despite those great men and women practicing that all the time. They still got it wrong by 300%. 44 minutes would be
I'd say that's significant.
a 300% failure on that is terrifying when it comes to protecting their sensitive assets. So if it takes them a 300% increase in time to protect their sensitive assets, I'm pretty certain protecting your sensitive assets is going to take a lot longer. And I think people want to be able to protect themselves, not just from what we may put on the street that's terrifying, but what our enemy may drop on the street. Because we've seen them fly drones and drop off armed quadruped robots and have them go through and mock clear a building. What's to stop 100 of those from being flown over and dropped on any city and you clear it? I believe it's Air Force. Is it Force Recon? Who is it who dropped into the battle zone to clear a space?
Oh, geez.
I think it's Force Recon. I think. Forgive me.
They all start to blend together in my mind of who does what. And
yeah, but all it takes is having a small set of robots clear an area. If I saw armed robots coming down the street, I would flee in terror. And all of a sudden, you have a clear space to land your troops. So it's not just the rise up of the machines are coming for us. There's a new tool on the battlefield that is terrifying to see.
Yeah,
you know?
I totally agree. We're gonna take a little half show break. Guys, be sure to support Blackout Coffee because they support us. The link is back blackoutcoffee.com/TGC and use the code TGC. Get yourself some coffee to sit back and enjoy while you're listening to the TGC podcast. And then when you're going out for the day, grab your Vertex bag and use the code TGC to get at least 15% off. I think it's really important to make sure that you guys please support the sponsors so that we can continue doing episodes like this. Barton, do you have a couple rounds handy? A couple projectiles handy? I want to have you show them to the audience, and I want to start a discussion about something. So could you hold a couple of them up for me?
Did you want to look at the pneumatic or the center fire?
But actually, let's grab some of both, and I want to start with the pneumatic ones. So for people that don't necessarily understand, pneumatic is something like a paintball gun or some kind of specific launcher. So what he has in his hand there are essentially, for lack of a better term, modified paintballs. And one of the issues, Barton, is people talk about accuracy because paintballs are not often very accurate.
Right.
Is there something that you guys can do to those capsules to make them more accurate?
No, but accuracy is really not the point. So when you bird hunt, I don't know if you bird hunt, I bird hunt. You don't hunt birds with a rifle. You hunt them with a shotgun that shoots a whole bunch of pellets all at once. And when you get that bird, it's not littered with pellets, or else you would destroy the meat. There'd be no point in hunting the bird and eating it. But it's got one, maybe two of those pellets in it. And how many are in the shotgun? A number 8, a bunch. And so
in this analogy, is your capsule part of the shot, or is it containing the shot?
No, it becomes the shot. So the firearm, the weapon systems, the marker launchers that shoot these, they shoot at about anywhere from 1 ball per second up to 20 balls per second. So one individual with a 1 foot of chain inside of this round.
Sorry.
No worries. So
let me make full size. Okay, there we go.
1 foot of chain inside this round at 20 balls per second. That's 20 feet per second. 4 seconds, that's 80 feet of chain. 2 individuals, like a roving patrol or maybe a double barrel, one of these that's automated, that's got a targeting system, etc. 2 of these would be able to shoot 160 feet of chain in about 4 seconds. And so the way paintball and pneumatic and pepperball and all these systems work, it's a lot like when shooting a .45. I am a metalled 45 pistol shooter. Come from 4 generations of metalled pistol shooting.
Wow.
I will tell you that when you shoot at night a tracer round and you look at it from the side, once they get past a certain distance, these will start to kind of go different directions. Things
Sure.
that are rifled, that are high powered and long barrels, those are very accurate to very long distances. But that's not how we hunt birds. And so when it's about hit ratio, you want to throw as many projectiles as you can into a certain area, a pattern, kind of like the choke on the end of a shotgun tube when you want to adjust that pattern. So at 100 feet, the accuracy is about 4 feet, one to 4 feet. At about 200 feet, it's about 6, and at about 300 feet, it's about 10. And so draw a circular a diameter of 10 feet at 300 feet, or a 6-foot pattern at 200 feet, or about a 2 to 4 foot pattern at about 100 feet. And you litter that circle with as many of these rounds as you can.
So
And
it's
what you end
accuracy
up
by
with,
volume.
yeah, hit ratio.
Sure.
And so 2 people can throw 160 feet of chain into a swarm of drones and flying in a pattern at about 10 feet in just 4 seconds. Because that's about all the time you're going to have to grab this from your side or back. They're very lightweight. To turn it on, ascertain in a matter of a second or two if this is a threat. And if it's coming at your base or flying at a plane or flying at your embassy, you have to make that decision. This is not something you can phone in. You have a short window. And that's the point of Title VI. There's a certain set of steps that allow these individuals to say, I've got to make this decision now. And in a matter of the remaining 5-6 seconds, 2 individuals or 2 barrels can unload in that pattern and knock as many drones out as they can. If that was a shotgun and you fired it, and then you had to chamber another round and fire again, or let's say you had a automatic and you were able to pull off as many rounds as you could. It's the same as hunting birds. You're not going to fire single projectiles at the birds. You're going to fire a whole bunch of them. And so again, when a bunch of these start to open, you now have 160 feet of twirling chain that's either impacted or burst open and falling on or up or being thrown into other rotors. And it does the most amount of damage with no collateral damage beyond the target to all of the neighborhoods, to the planes.
I can't imagine like a a light chain coming down out of the sky. You'd just be like, oh, what the hell is that? That was weird. Okay,
Right.
so my next question then, can you hold up that black and red one again to nice and close to the camera so people can get a good close look at it?
Yeah, these are the jammer rounds. So and forgive me, guys, the camera's backwards, and I am.
So my question about this style of projectile is we were able to make golf balls more accurate and controllable with dimpling. Why is that not possible?
It is.
It is possible. Okay, so why not take that approach?
Because all the ones that have dimples right now are coming out of China, and they're more aerodynamic and they'll fly more straight. They're made of wax, harder wax instead of plastic. But they have 2 problems. One, the company that makes them, when we were researching it, we found that they have trouble putting their spheres together. They're a little offset. Okay. And so maybe every 4th or 5th one was offset. And the other one was we couldn't find anyone anywhere else on the planet that was doing anything like that. And I didn't want to have to explain to those 3 and 4 letter agencies, I promise I didn't order these from China.
Right. Right. And with munitions of any sort, that is generally speaking
very compliant.
Yeah.
If any one of your viewers is not familiar with it,
I'm sure lots of them are, but go ahead and explain.
Very compliance is when all of the products you are working with, all of their little bits and parts are also from the United States. So everything you're sourcing to make your part is manufactured here at home. So when dealing with defense contracting and law enforcement and military, it's important to them to have your product very compliant.
You know what's interesting? I think one of the first people I ever had a discussion about with Berry compliance in the industry is your business partner, Dan. Like
Yeah.
probably 10 years ago, I had a conversation with him about that very thing.
Yep. Yeah. I think Dan is who taught me about Berry compliance as well. Thank
Yeah.
you, Dan.
So we talked about the accuracy. One of the other things that I think is very important is I want to try and understand how. So we've talked about this in embassies and things like that. Let's talk about the fact that you do offer some that could be useful in a prepper's closet, so to speak.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. I mean,
what kind
all
of
of these. Let's have a Swiss Army knife fun conversation. So there is a fire in the doorway, or a small fire, or you need to clear a pathway for you to run through. There is the damper round. The damper round can contain any type of fire retardant or fire suppressant powder that you would like, from Purple K, ABC, whether you're fighting chemicals or I don't think that anything will put out a, a magnesium fire in a dumpster. So
I was going to say,
I'm
what
not
about
claiming
thermite?
this
What
won't.
about thermite?
Yeah, this won't put out everything, but we've been testing it, hoping that someone will create drones, and we found an organization that does a firefighting drone organization that is interested in our rounds to load onto drones to fight in hard to reach areas. So down a hallway or the forward compartment of a ship. Now, I don't know where they would use the rounds, but you could use this, say, to put out a fire to let, in the middle of a riot, or a courtyard riot in a prison, or a street riot. Obviously, a lot of the time, these are fires that are set with the intention of not being able to put out. So I don't want to claim that these will put out everything, but again, anything we can give our first responders a fighting chance to do better. They had a really neat idea to use our marker rounds, and these can be filled with UV, ultraviolet, or glow powder. The
Okay.
glow powder is actually utilized for our tracer rounds. So this is not one that we have patented, and is one that others can make. But when you charge the powder up, and you have to buy really good, expensive, inorganic glowing powder, if you charge those up, you can actually use them as tracer rounds every other, or every 3 or 4,
Wow.
or dump them into your hopper, and then you can see at night kind of where your trajectory is.
That is
So
that is pretty
they
interesting.
thought it would be interesting to use these rounds to mark an exit for firefighters out of a fire, because they wouldn't necessarily be able to see that. Or, for clandestine work, you'd be able to mark a path into a specific area that wouldn't be able to be visible. And in wartime, we've been discussing this with another organization, that you'd be able to mark targets to be able to see with a specific vision, so you could see targets marked on the battlefield that are the bad guys.
That is really,
Yeah,
really
right.
interesting. Sort of IR reflective.
Yes.
One of the things that came to mind when we were talking about the fire suppression.
Mhm.
So two things. One, the capability depends entirely on what's inside the pellet
Yeah.
or the projectile. And two, my first thought when you said being able to put out fires was something of, like a transformer exploding outside the home, some sort of electrical thing,
Mhm.
or a lightning strike or something like that, which does happen quite frequently. Infrastructure explodes, and trees explode, and fires and that sort of thing. I think it'd be really interesting to have that in the home to maybe be able to put out or suppress a fire that you can't physically reach. I think that's
Yeah.
a really interesting application.
Imagine a building or a ship, a cruise line, that had a box on the aft or the stern, and it opened up during a fire, and about 10 drones popped out, and these would be the same kind of drones that friendly drones, flying 4, 6 rotor-based drones that are quite similar to the crop dusting drones that have a good 15 to 20 pound capacity. And they have a large bin on top that holds liquid and a sprayer down below, so they can go and they can spray their crops on a pattern. So they're able to carry a load. They have a dispensing mechanism, and they can come back, refill, and go back out. So why not use the same technology and use the damper rounds filled with the appropriate fire suppressant powder, and have these go and fight a fire on the top of a smokestack, or maybe on the outside of the ship while you're at sea, where no other ships are around and can get to you. Until they can get to you, they
Sure.
can help fight that fire. Or on top of a high-rise building, these all come out the top, go around to the sides, fight the fire from the side until help can get there. Because, it's all about time, minutes, how many lives you can save, and how many seconds. So if these give people a few more seconds or minutes, that's all that matters.
Man, that is the possibilities. When we started last time, we got into some crazy discussion because the possibilities of what you can do with this
Yeah.
concept of encapsulating and delivering through whatever means, delivering this chemical compound or metallic compound. It's fascinating to me what's possible. I So we talked about the ability to use the fire retardant ones in the home. What would be something else like that you guys make currently that would make a lot of sense for somebody to keep around the house besides fire retardant? Is there anything else that makes a lot of sense?
Um, because a lot of our stuff is made, like the jammer rounds blocks lidar and radar, and so currently there's no robots that are after us, and that would block their vision. You can't shoot at a drone with the jammer rounds or the tangler rounds. And then I imagine if you were firing at a CCTV at the end of a hallway in order to block its vision so that you could do things, that would probably also be very frowned upon. So the tanglers and the jammers, you've got the melters, which are a harder shell that contains a liquefied gallium inside.
Okay.
That is amalgamous. So the outside is knurled with a K. It's kind of like what a workout bar where your hands go. It's been knurled. So the outer shell is knurled so that it will etch the aluminum and deposit a bit of aluminum onto it, and it's designed to degrade infrastructure. And that is
Wow.
not for a robot. These are all for all the pneumatic rounds. Let me make this clear. I saw a few replies. We don't recommend firing plastic balls at robots. It will only make the robot probably angry, and it will only want to hurt you faster. So these are only for various infrastructure, drone, and other purposes. Only our center fire rounds are intended to be anti-robotic. So, but the gallium, it does destroy infrastructure, and again, that's not really around. I think the public probably is going to have much use for. So the damper rounds currently are the only round we make aside from the marker rounds, which have a lot of practical reasons. If you are a farmer or if you're trying to clear property, you can tag trees with this without having to go out and get into the poison ivy and crawl over. There is an insect round called stingers, and you can use these to knock uh, wasp and hornet nests off of utility poles, water towers,
That's interesting.
radio control towers. One of my buddies got trapped climbing up a tall ladder that he shouldn't have, and along the way there was a wasp nest, and it was just all over him. So I talked to another friend who works on utility poles, and he said, "Yep, there's always a wasp nest up there. They love to build up there because no one ever goes up." So this would enable you to knock things off of the radio towers, the water towers, so that municipal and utility workers have a chance at doing that. And then we make a round called the Ladybird, and it's filled with it's our version of an inert round. And instead of having baby powder in it, because I know there's two things that plants don't crave, and that's Brondo and
Yes.
baby powder. Okay. And
Okay.
so ours is full of seeds. And so they're full of daisy seeds, and they weigh the same as an inert round. And so whenever you shoot these and they explode everywhere, yes, there'll be the same amount of plastic from the shell as before, but now all the contents that explode everywhere are planting flowers.
That's honestly, that's kind of interesting if you wanted, to sort of area of effect where you're, a one man show and you've got a remote hillside or something like that. You wanted to just get some seeds out there. That could be kind of interesting.
Yeah, yeah, you could make a biodegradable shell that
Sure.
melts in the rain and out pops seeds. We're onto something here, John.
I saw years ago. I saw, and this pops up every once in a while. Somebody tried to do that with a shotgun shell, and largely that's a terrible idea because you're basically destroying the shell or the seeds. When
Plant your vegetables faster. Yeah.
Precisely, yeah. Um, Shotgun shells, that's generally speaking not a great delivery method for anything that's shock sensitive.
Yeah.
I've tried it with the seasoned shot. We did a video on that years ago where it has like seasoning in it, and the idea is that the shot carries the seasoning inside the meat. And it carries so little into the target that it's virtually pointless. I just that the idea of delivering stuff with a shotgun shell, but if you're talking about pneumatic, that's interesting. However,
slice your steak faster.
it's like one of those infomercials, late
Yeah.
night shotgun shell buying. So one of the things I don't think we covered a ton last time was the center fire. Exactly.
The center fire one. So let's see. Again, I'm backwards here, but here are our center fire rounds.
Okay. So explain what you have there.
So this is a hollow point 9mm round. And let me just hold one of these up here.
And for anybody watching, he's got a row of bins full of these projectiles right behind him. So you like these are you going to sell the projectiles, or are they going to be loaded ammo?
So we work with a large manufacturer of cartridges, and we supply them with the projectile, and then they ship out actually to our customers. So we don't actually have or make or load anything but the actual projectiles.
Okay. So what types did you held up? Two different kinds there. Can you explain what they are?
So let's see here. We've got a magnetic one that, and let me go ahead and describe the basic premise here.
Sure. Yeah.
And forgive me for my dry mouth. One of the rules here in the lab is no fluids, no food. So,
oh my gosh,
I'm doing this whole podcast drink free. But as a shout out to your sponsors, go coffee, because coffee makes the world go round.
That's blackoutcoffee.com/TGC.
There we go. There we go. So go ahead. We start with a basic hollow point round, and we've been testing, as you can see, the bins behind me. We test Acura and berries, and the one that worked really well for us was the berry. Okay. It's an existing hollow point round, but we do a little bit of work to the round, and we fill it with one of our metallic compounds. We then have a complete array. Let's see if I can slowly push this up. All right. So do you see the top row? Yeah. And I won't stay up here long, folks, because there's a nice shiny spot on my bald head. That entire top row are all ballistic tips. And so we wanted to go ahead and try and test as many different types of ballistic tip that we could. And so some of these have a inert plastic, Delrin plastic tip, and some of them have a titanium, which actually is not really armor piercing, but a lot of these have specific reactions with the compound behind them. So these are all designed to penetrate robotic shielding. These are not designed to penetrate anything more than heavy aluminum, heavy plastic, very thin sheet metal shielding, because we want the contents to stay inside the robot. So these are CQB, close quarters combat rounds. Right now we're working with 9mm, but we've also got 45 and 40. But 9mm seems to be the most ubiquitous that everybody's working with.
Agreed. Yeah.
The hollow point penetrates the shielding and then basically just comes apart. It just like you would imagine, it flies off in different directions and it spreads this metal compound everywhere. And the fragmentation of the round kind of rips open, uncoats wires, disrupts things on its own. But then what's left behind does something secondary. So everything Robo Rounds makes has a secondary reaction. The pneumatic rounds, they pack a punch on the drone. But once some of these will hit the drone, break an arm or a motor or a rotor, clear off the drone because of the weight of the round. But when that bursts open, it throws out a secondary impact, the chain. So with the center fire rounds, the idea is not just to shoot the robot. We wanted to hit the robot and leave something inside that did something more, something that would affect circuits, sensors, circuitry, computers. That's going to be things like conductive materials, magnetic materials, abrasive materials, different. I don't want to get too much into it because a lot of it's proprietary.
Sure,
but
so you're basically delivering a payload to get a specific job done.
Yes, not only to hit it, not only to impact it, but also to leave something behind. Imagine a robot that I think I saw one of your the replies on the last podcast that mentioned gallium, and what good is it now if the gallium isn't going to do any good until later? Because gallium, to become amalgamous with aluminum, takes a little bit of time, not a long time, but a little bit of time. So imagine 10 robots come, deposit drones, or do something terrible, and then they return home. And you're only able to stop 4 of them. You shoot them all, but you only stopped 4. Well, the other 6 that went back by morning are going to have a lot of problems if their infrastructure, things that hold the gear, things that support the battery case, a lot of that has to be very lightweight structurally, just like our bones or a bird. The infrastructure has to be lightweight with heavy shielding. Think like a knight.
Sure.
Tender on the inside and all tough on the outside. And so once you get inside, you have to have something that can do something. Just like with us, you shoot someone on the battlefield and it goes right through them. You miss every organ, but they still have a hole in the front of them and a hole in the back of them. They're not just going to go back and say, I don't have time to bleed. They're going to say, hey, man, I need help. And so they risk infection. They risk bleed out. They risk hernia. The list goes on and on. But with the robot, it doesn't. It just goes right through them. And the robot's like, yeah, I got a hole in me. All right, yeah, back to work. All right, got a hole in me. Back to work. So you want to leave something behind that says, yeah, I noticed overnight I've got degenerative bone disease.
So would you compare it to delivering like on say like a poison tipped arrow or something like that? Is that the Okay.
Yeah, I mean, well said, John. Actually, I don't think anybody's heard it phrased that way, but that's just the same. I've been saying we've been finding ways to give robots multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, and brain disorders, and severe overnight osteoporosis. But the truth of the matter is, we're just poison-tipped arrows. The arrow does its damage, but you pull it out. But the damage isn't over, and it's going to do its real damage shortly thereafter. Okay. And so these rounds are designed for close quarters combat, where you're going to encounter robots where you can't fire an armor-piercing, high-powered rifle round indiscriminately at your target, because there's other things on the other side of the target, namely your neighbors across the street. And so you have to fire something that's intended to go short range, hard, quick impact, do secondary damage. So if you're lucky, you put, 10 9mm rounds into a robot and you stop it. But what if the 9th and 10th one did something extra, or the 5th and 6th one did something extra that enabled it to just stop for a second? And we're working on a lot more rounds that do some incredibly interesting things. But for now, we tried to focus specifically on what we thought would affect sensors and circuitry immediately. And that was magnetic stuff, conductive stuff, abrasive stuff. So inside that there's mechanical. So if you can do something that would stop it to work mechanically. And, most mechanical systems don't do well when you introduce metallic powders into their pneumatic systems, their actuators, their servos and gears. When you have exploding neodymium in the same respect, it kind of makes a lot of that magnetite then clog and adhere. So if we can clog an artery, if we can sever a wire, if we can create whiskering is a neat one. And that's under high impact, under high impact pressures, zinc and tin and a few other metals. And when you mix a few of them together, do quite better. Will actually create a bunch of little hairs that will allow electric signals to cross circuit. So it's like all of a sudden dripping solder all over. Now, granted, this is not as big as solder. We have a round that sort of acts in that respect. But in this capacity, it's like if you were to spray solder onto a circuit board, you're in essence creating.
Oh, man.
Yeah, you're creating all these pathways that the robot did not intend. Its users and manufacturer did not intend. And so it's not just enough to get inside or pierce the robot. And it's not enough because we were told that you can pierce the shielding. And to be more specific, just because I agree, one of the replies was very good, and I gave them kudos for being the first to call me out on that. Not specifically pierce the CPU or pierce the battery, but the shielding that's placed around those. Mm-hmm. I can't say who is accurate or isn't. If you can shoot someone on the shoulder and it flies out their leg, because that's what projectiles do in fluid-filled cavities, is some strange stuff. I'm not suggesting this is going to be any more accurate or any more destructive as a round. I'm simply saying that our rounds do more than just impact and destroy. They leave something behind that affects the robots in ways they did not intend.
I have another question, and this is straight out of the comments from the last one. It was either black spray paint and sand or oil and sand.
Oil and sand, yeah.
That is the way. Both of those came up a couple different times. Mm-hmm. Do you guys have a similar round that would incapacitate some sort of moving entity, electronic entity? Do you have a thing that is the equivalent of that?
Well, here's the problem. So you have to think about a couple of things. One, manufacturing. Manufacturing process. I'm so jealous that you have a drink right now.
Sorry, I'm rubbing it in. Sorry.
So thirsty. The quantities that you have here, let me grab two of these rounds. So the quantity of amount of powder that you have, the metallic powder in here, because compared to the amount that can go inside of a 9mm, is very significantly different weight-wise. Then you start to think about the manufacturing process and how that's manufactured. Once you start getting into anything liquid, then you really make the process incredibly difficult. And the reason is because that causes spillage. If any of these break while they're being stored, that causes leakage. And again, I'm former EOD, and I know that whenever you see a box with leaky corners, the first thing you assume is it's a letter bomb or it's an explosive. So I would hate to have all of a sudden have anyone storing cardboard boxes anywhere with leaky corners or anything like that. And so one of the biggest things we tried to do before we started filing patents and intellectual property, et cetera, was specifically coming to the idea behind metal powder deposition. So the MPD round is the first anti-robotic categorical round. And that specifically has metal powder in it because the manufacturing process for us is a lot easier, a lot safer, and it will allow things to be stored for a lot longer, and we don't have to worry about any kind of reaction with the tips, whether it's inert Delrin plastic or it's a it's something more like a chromium tip.
So really, the issue there is not necessarily the efficacy of that concept, but rather making that concept on mass scale
Yeah,
and into a projectile form.
yeah, because when it's pneumatic, it's not going to affect the drone. Whether if you shoot it with liquid, it's just going to just get it wet, and so the robots, it's just going to keep pushing forward. You have to hit it with something that is kinetic, but also if you can do something secondary, like it throws the rotor, and multiple people asked, hey, that's nothing more than the old uh, the bolo round from the cannonball with the ball
Sure.
on one end and the ball on the other, and they're absolutely right.
Same concept. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly where we got the concept from. And the idea of throwing these out of a pneumatic launcher tube came specifically from paintball. So everything we did was to really try and take what is already out there, what exists, the infrastructure that everybody already has on hand, and to simply give them something that worked better. And so the volume of uh, liquid or a corrosive or an oil, none of that's really going to have much impact or efficacy on a drone in the short term. It would inside the center fire, but you don't have enough volume with that center fire to make that kind of difference. And manufacturing wise, it's just too difficult. So we've tried to find similar products that operate in the same way, but in powder form.
Sure. I think that's incredible that you guys are pushing this boundary. There are so many more pathways that we could go with this discussion. And I encourage you, if you're out there watching, listening, to check out roborounds.com. That is their website, and they've got tons more info. Leave comments down below. These guys are absolutely watching. And I mean, hell, if there's demand for it, we'll do another episode where we just continue down this pathway. I'm hopefully before the end of the year going to get a chance to see this stuff in person.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be absolutely nuts. It's going to be really cool.
Please don't say where, but we're
no. I just in person somewhere. And
we're doing a big demonstration for the military in September, and there's a bunch of agencies that will be attending, etc. But that should be quite interesting, and we've invited Jon to come along.
Yeah, and maybe they'll let me film it with a high-speed camera. I don't know. We'll see. Because that, my friends, would be really, really cool to see. Barton, is there anything else you want people to know before we wrap up?
Yeah, I really appreciate all the replies and all the honesty and the straightforwardness. I thought it was 100% great responses. One of your replies actually engaged me in a rap battle, and I have to admit I responded in rap form. So you're welcome to scroll through that and find that. I'm no rapper, but that was kind of fun.
I think
it's a great show. I really appreciate the Gun Collective having me and talking with us and exposing what we're doing.
Well, we appreciate you coming on and sharing and educating all of us. We really do. And yeah, I guess that'll wrap it up for today. As always, guys, check out our sponsors, Blackout Coffee and Vertex. Code is TGC on both of those. We really do appreciate Barton being here, and we appreciate you guys watching and listening. We'll see y'all next time.
Have a good one.